Sports Director Quinn Roby, alongside Bryce Cohen, the Sports Managing Editor at the Daily Athenaeum. Bryce, it's just going to be you and I for the summer going through things every Friday, at least when we can. But the Mountaineer Sports, they don't stop. WVU Athletics doesn't stop. It's a year-round thing, and we've seen that the last couple of years. And right now it's the 23rd of May, and baseball is riding high in the Big 12 tournament. The 1 seed just got the win. But, first off, how are you? And, how excited are you to do this?
Quinn, it's great to hear your voice. It's great to be on here with you. Very excited. I'm glad that there is still WVU athletics news to talk about this stage in the game. Usually when you see the academic calendar come and go, the sports calendar goes with it. But when you have a baseball team setting program records and wins and competing for a national championship, getting ready to go to the NCAA tournament, it's a lot of excitement around this program, and I'm glad to be able to talk about that and other WVU news with you.
Yeah, this baseball team, we've talked endlessly about, where they are, their ceiling, their floor, but, they had a tough series against Kansas to close out the season where they lost all 3 games, and they actually, I think, lost the last 5 out of their last 6. So that was a rough stretch. But yesterday's game seemed like the team was back. Griffin Kern, we saw him do what he's done all year, but this time in a expanded capacity, with him going out there a full 9 innings and being dominant pretty much the whole game. It was that leadoff batter that he walked, and that was pretty much it, that where he wasn't in control or he wasn't battling an account. And then the bats turned on. Kyle West got it going for West Virginia, and you kind of knew it was funny in the TV. On the TV broadcast, they interviewed Sabins, and he said, we just need one guy to get maybe something out of the park to get things going, and that's exactly how it happened. But West Virginia just seemed to, it was one thing after another. They just kept putting up the crooked numbers. It wasn't just a 1, it was a 5 or a 6. It was just one after another.
Yeah, anyone that's been around baseball their life knows that when one person starts hitting, the hits don't stop. And this is a lineup that has, throughout the Big 12 schedule, as well as the non-conference in those midweek games, has consistently put up numbers that have allowed the pitching to, reel teams back into the game. I know they have struggled with closing out games as of late, but we saw dominant performances, not only from Griffin Kern, but also from the plate appearances from the likes of Kyle West. Grant Hussey got in on the action. You had lots of traffic throughout the whole game, and I think that was what was the differentiating in this matchup against Cincinnati rather than some of their last couple of matchups, is that they did not let Cincinnati get back in the game. And the fact that the ball did not go into a bullpen pitcher's hands throughout the entire matchup is very reminiscent of last year against the University of North Carolina when Derek Clark pitched his arm off against them in the Super Regionals. So a fantastic performance from him, but leading into obviously today's matchup against Arizona, you got to see who they decide to start for the Mountaineers and also how they would attack some of these tougher Big 12 lineups with some of those bullpen arms.
Yeah, and like you had mentioned, him going that whole length, allowing 8 hits but only 3 earned runs with 9 strikeouts. He was in control. There was a point in the game where both pitchers, in Carson Marsh for Cincinnati and Griffin Kern for West Virginia, had a combined 11 strikeouts in the game at one point. And then after the Kyle West home run, they ended up pulling Carson Marsh, which was very surprising to me due to how good he was. I mean, he had only allowed that 1 home run, and then, you put things together and, they ended up using, 6 other pitchers in that game. And you had Brandon Scherr go 2 1/3 innings with 56 pitches thrown. That is a lot of pitches thrown for a guy in 2 1/3. But then you only had other guys that, barely won an inning or even an inning at that. And so Cincinnati, it was right after they pulled Carson Marsh, they just couldn't get things going. And you almost wonder if you keep Carson Marsh in that game could have ended completely different. And as Steve Sabins has called it, the chapter could have been written differently. West Virginia could have been eliminated. And so, I mean, you look at it now, Griffin Kern, like you said, and I said it to somebody, it might have been Cody or Brett. He looked like Derek Clark. He was commanding like Derek Clark. It seemed like the exact, I think even Derek Clark went a full game last year in the tournament because it was double elimination, so they played two. But I think in one of them, he went a full length. But you're going to need that out of him in the NCAA tournament, whether you're at home or if you're on the road. I've seen some places put him in Tennessee, and you have to play Tennessee or Louisville and then one other school possibly. But you're going to need that out of Griffin Kern, your ace, with a 5-2 record. I have not seen him pitch a bad game all year.
Yeah, and kind of, piggybacking off what you said when it comes to even hosting a regional at this point, 41 wins, it's been thrown around. That is now a program record in wins for West Virginia University baseball. When you look at the season from an overview and you kind of don't hone in on what these last few weeks have looked like, obviously this is the most successful season in program history, and also coming in Steve Saban's first year as the manager. I think that alone, being the best team in the Big 12, if you pair that with a strong showing in the Big 12 actual championship game in the Big 12 tournament, I think that should warrant the ability for West Virginia to host a regional. But also, we see how the NCAA committee has handled West Virginia University athletics in other sports, right? And even when West Virginia University was in the Sun Belt, right, for soccer, they have gotten the short end of the stick when it has come to NCAA tournament seeding. So if you feel like it's a 50-50 chance, you have to almost automatically assume that WVU is going to get the short end of the stick. But I will say on that note, too, as well, about Cincinnati pitcher Carson Marsh. Obviously, hindsight is 20/20, and when you make that decision in-game for UC, it maybe felt like the right move. This guy, 3-5 as a starting pitcher all season, and I know what they say about wins and losses for a pitcher. It is a team stat. It is not necessarily an individual stat. But Cincinnati was not able to respond after WVU essentially punched them in the face offensively when they went up 5-1 in the fourth inning. I think that was really the differentiating point. And once WVU sort of got their confidence back, because we've seen struggles in the lineup, turning it over and over again without base runners on, and also not capitalizing with runners in scoring position, that was the start they needed to the Big 12 tournament. And they're still the top dog in the Big 12. So we'll see how it goes today. But I think that they have a strong chance with a continued strong showing in this tournament, especially if they become the double Big 12 champions, to host a super regional, or just a regional in general.
Yeah, I you and I know this word very well, RPI. That is a huge thing when it comes to picking for the selection committee as to who hosts. West Virginia is currently 27th, so obviously got to be top 16 in baseball. So you're far away there. But I think if you win the Big 12, they're gonna let you host. Not let you, but you're gonna host. But West Virginia, being 27th, they moved up one spot with that win last night. I would assume that tonight with a win, let's see, Arizona is 33rd. So you get a win later this evening when we're recording this now, you're going to move up. I don't know how far. It obviously depends on, I can tell you one thing, if Kansas loses, that helps out extremely well because TCU is 19. So if Kansas can lose, they're not going to move far, but you would then assume that, West Virginia and Kansas are going to swap, at least in some format. West Virginia's strength of schedule, that also plays a part in this. It's at a solid 100. They have the 100th hardest schedule in the country, so that doesn't play you any favors either. I will say, though, the part that does help you for West Virginia is your Q2, so your Quad 2 and your Quad 3 wins are 11-3 and 14-3. So you're really good there. Quad 1, you're 5-7. So this is an opportunity to get that Quad 1 win. I would assume that Arizona would be credited as a Quad 1 win, so you could get another one back there. And then obviously in the championship game, you're going to play Kansas or TCU. That's going to be a Quad 1 win. So you have a chance here to make a statement. Now, it's what you do with that opportunity, and Steve Saban has even said that time and time again, that this is a different story. This is a new chapter in the book. that is being written, and I really like him putting it in that perspective because it's true. A season this long, you are writing a story, especially with a first-year head coach. Now, he's not new to the area or anything. He's been here 10 years. These are his guys that he recruited to Morgantown. There was no, him getting guys in the transfer portal to come with him elsewhere. No, these are his guys that he has recruited. He has been the main recruiter for about 5-6 years now. Randy Mazey was just doing the manager type of stuff, and Steve Sabins was that lead recruiter. So no surprise that they're winning at the rate that they are with 41 wins and 13 losses. So West Virginia has a chance this weekend, the next 2 days, to get themselves in prime position to host a regional and make themselves. They won't be lower than a 2 seed. That's guaranteed in a regional. So you're not really playing for that seeding, but you have a chance to try and host a game. Which I will tell you this, and if you were just stumbled upon the Mountaineer Sports Insider for some reason, Kendrick Family Ballpark in a regional will be the loudest ballpark that weekend in all of the country. There's no doubt about it. That place will be sold out instantly with nothing but blue and gold. And especially if you can get a team like Kentucky in there or a team like Louisville, a team that's close, a team that West Virginia has, in other sports played aggressively. I think you could really get a crowd there, unlike any other at Kendrick Family Ballpark, and I know that the players would really enjoy that because they saw how that fan base reacted. They lose 3 straight, but that fan base sticks around to watch them hoist the regular season trophy. That's what it means, and I know that place would be rocking.
Great point. And speaking of a different first-year head coach, this one at a different sport. On the men's basketball side, we saw Ross Hodge make a podcast appearance earlier this week with CBS Sports' John Rothstein, and an actually very insightful interview into a little bit of the scheduling kinks for the Mountaineers. Kind of gave a little nod to what the non-conference schedule could round out and look like. As we know already, West Virginia is set to host the Backyard Brawl this year in men's basketball, taking on Pitt, as well as a scheduled non-conference matchup in Cleveland, Ohio, against the Ohio State Buckeyes on December 13th. He mentioned in this interview he is looking to add some marquee matchups, some high-level neutral court matchups. They also obviously have the MTE tournament that they'll be playing in as well. That is against other Power 4 level competitors. I gotta say, I'm looking at last year's non-conference schedule. You have teams like Robert Morris, which is a geographically close school to WVU. You have UMass, an A10 school. Pitt, obviously. Iona, another East Coast basketball program. Obviously, they're going to bring back the Big 12 Big East Challenge this year. So that was last year. They took on Georgetown. You can imagine they go on the road somewhere this year. But I got to ask you, Quinn, who would be a dream matchup for you in this non-conference schedule for Ross Hodge and his crew to add? You could even almost say, hey, throw in a North Texas for the That's definitely got some storylines around it with Ross Hodge leaving his former program and then taking them on the next year. And they've had a good lineage of head coaches there who have gone on to advance. So, that could be something they do. But I want to hear your take on that, Quinn.
They played them 2 years ago, my freshman year, in the Coliseum. But I think St. John's, Rick Pitino, you can't go wrong with him at all because the crowd that he's going to bring and the program that St. John's is now, they're back. It's not, a St. John's team that is, just came off of a losing season. It is a St. John's team that was very disappointed in themselves at the way that they exited the NCAA tournament. That would be a very hungry St. John's team, and I think early in the year with, West Virginia getting Eagle staff back after he tested the NBA draft waters, the roster that you're likely going to have, I think that would be a great matchup for West Virginia. Because of that, I think you have the quality guys on this roster so far. Now, obviously, I know that he still has a lot of spots open. Obviously, Hawthorne goes to Kentucky, so that's a spot there that you kind of were really hoping you had a pull on. but I think West Virginia and St. John's would be great. But that also could be biased for me because I grew up watching West Virginia, St. John's, and Georgetown, and all these Big East schools, Providence even. I watched these schools play in the Coliseum. But if you want to throw in another one in there, I mean, I guess you'd say UConn, right? I mean, you can't, who doesn't want to play UConn? I mean, I know they're not, reigning national champs or whatever, but it's a Hurley. I mean, when Arizona State came in, that place was rocking because it was a Hurley. So I think UConn or St. John's, if you had to pick out of the Big East, I think those two, because it will bring you a lot of spotlight. And we saw last year towards the beginning of the year, this team had no spotlight. Obviously, Robert Morris, they went out and they were winning 20-0. I think they went on a 20-0 run to start the season. And then that was like, well, it's just Robert Morris. Well, then we saw Robert Morris end up making the NCAA tournament and actually almost making a decent Cinderella story there. But I think those are the schools that you got to look at. I mean, St. John and UConn, you cannot go wrong with those schools. I mean, the programs that they are and the history behind it would be so good for West Virginia. To be able to play them now, not necessarily in the Coliseum, you could do a neutral site, but with the Big East, Big 12 Challenge, it's going to be one way or the other. And like you had mentioned, they're most likely going to be on the road. I would agree with that because the last 2 years West Virginia has played at home. So I would doubt that the Big 12 gives them 3 straight years of a home game like that. But who knows? Maybe they'll feel bad for West Virginia. It's your third head coach in 3 years. Who knows?
Yeah, I got to say, definitely one matchup I would love to see in the non-conference schedule would be Pat Kelsey's Louisville come to the Coliseum. You have a couple of different storylines there. Obviously, you had the Battle for Atlantis, which completely different team, completely different staff last season, but still, program against program, it was renewing that old Big East rivalry. And also, when you look at a West Virginia native like Isaac McNeely, if he gets to play at the Coliseum, that would be intriguing, I think, for people who have followed not only West Virginia State basketball, but also the Mountaineers to see, what some consider one of the better WVU high school basketball players in the last couple of years to come out and play in the Division I level in the NCAA. That would be very interesting. But I think the way it is shaped up now, especially when you throw in the Charleston Classic, which you have matchups against Clemson or Georgia or Xavier in there, all high-level programs. All three of those teams could be tournament teams this year with the additions they've made, and obviously Xavier getting a new head coach in Richard Pitino. I think that the way they're challenging themselves in the non-conference as it is scheduled right now, if they are competitive through the non-conference, all of a sudden it kind of turns into what last year was, which is if you have a decent, Big 12 showing in the Big 12 schedule, you could set yourself up for an NCAA tournament appearance, which for those who have been around this program believe that last year should have been one of those years where West Virginia made it to the NCAA tournament. This year, no different. Ross Hodge also mentioned on the CBS Sports podcast with John Rothstein that he wants to make West Virginia, bring him back to the NCAA tournament, as well as the ultimate goal, winning a national championship, which Rome wasn't built in a day. So it would definitely be unrealistic to ask of a national championship out of a first-year head coach when there is certainly going to be a lot of work to do. But nonetheless, from what we've seen in the non-conference scheduling up to this point, it looks like they're really trying to get some of those marquee, highly televised, eyes on the program matchups that West Virginia needs in the non-conference to have a competitive resume when it comes to Selection Sunday, because we know more than pretty much anybody else how much of a threshold they have to reach to be 100% guaranteed to make the tournament. Because let's face it, everyone thought they were going to make the NCAA tournament last season. It did not happen for one reason or another, and there's going to be an expectation to get back to that level one day, and also not lose in the first round, make a little bit of a run.
Yeah, I completely I agree. I think if you're Ren Baker, you're gonna have a little bit of a say as to who you schedule because you don't want that again. So you're gonna be looking at who Ross wants to play for every good reason, not a bad reason. I think West Virginia obviously needs more of those games. You obviously probably could have replaced, that UMass game with another Power 4 school. And who knows, if you'd have went on to win that game, that probably puts you in the NCAA tournament. So I think West Virginia is going to need to put a lot of eyes on this program if they want to try to make the NCAA tournament. I mean, because we have seen with the new era of college athletics now, you can go in and year out and have a completely new roster and still be a tournament team. West Virginia, like you had mentioned, everybody thought they were a tournament team, and they ideally were, according to every bracketologist except one. And so West Virginia obviously will have to go on and make that. I think the Ohio State game in Cleveland is awesome because that gets you a lot of the fans in northern West Virginia, gives them a chance to drive to Cleveland, which is ideally closer to Cleveland than Morgantown in a way. But that also gives you have fans up there as well. Now, obviously, Ohio State, it's stretched through the whole state of Ohio. But with West Virginia playing in Cleveland, I was there 2 years ago when they played in Cleveland, and it was 50-50. There were some West Virginia fans. There was one special West Virginia fan there. His name is Bob Huggins. He was even there, and so you have to like that. Now, if that was a Ross Hodge or a Ren Baker decision, kudos to whoever it was, because that is a really good game. That game was, West Virginia that year was not very good. It was one of Raekwon Battle's very first games. It was maybe his third game of the year. They went on and held an Ohio State team that was, I think, if not ranked, they were ranked right after that. Took them to overtime. So it's going to be a good matchup. I think every time that they play in Cleveland, it's good. Now, obviously, the way to get the arena is pretty easy for West Virginia, with Mike Gansey being the general manager of the Cleveland Cavaliers. He's always going to let you come and play there. But I think it's good for West Virginia to travel to these semi-close locations and play a neutral site game, because it gives you, the chance for those fans to make it to games. I mean, West Virginia used to travel and play Marshall in Charleston every year. And honestly, I wouldn't be opposed to that either. Now, we obviously know that West Virginia, on their side of things, says that it doesn't really benefit them to play Marshall anymore. But, I mean, in basketball, the last couple of seasons, Marshall almost beat them. And so it's like, with these games, you can play whoever, and you don't know who's going to win what. But I think the Ohio State game is a very good example as to trying to get in the national spotlight in a different area, not just Morgantown.
And if you think regionally as well, where they've scheduled the non-conference so far, obviously the home match against Pitt. But even then, if you're going on the road, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is not super far away. The MTE is in Charleston, South Carolina. That's a drivable distance for some West Virginia fans, you'd have to imagine. Cleveland, Ohio, obviously, from Morgantown, that's nearly, 3.5 hours, 3 hours away. So that's not a terrible drive either.
It's maybe 3, if that.
Right. So it looks like right now they're searching for, close regional competition. And this isn't, mid-major level teams. These are teams that could be quad one opportunities, when the time comes. And, when you look at every single team they have on their non-conference schedule right now, these are all teams that have either improved their rosters or stayed the same. And at that point, these are teams that could be tournament teams when it comes to March. So you definitely look like right now, with things are going, obviously you're going to throw in some mid-major programs when that non-conference schedule comes out, and it's going to round out what the Mountaineers will be playing before the Big 12 comes around. But it looks like they are definitely trying to challenge themselves right now. If I was putting myself in the athletic director's shoes, I would imagine this is in response to how the NCAA, withheld, West Virginia from the tournament last year, because this is essentially saying, hey, listen, we are leaving no room for competition. We're going to challenge ourselves right out of the bat. And when you look at, obviously, we could get into the roster acquisitions that this team has made. It looks like a team that is going to be very competitive in year one. So regardless, it looks like the non-conference schedule is going to be something competitive, maybe even more competitive than last season.
Yeah, and I think now, I think you have to do it. Obviously, you're going to want a few games early that you can get wins and get confidence, but nothing brings more confidence than beating a Power 4 school that happens to be ranked in your place, or even on the road for that matter. I think you have to, because you don't want that feeling again. I mean, that feeling sucked for us. I can't imagine what it felt for those guys. it sucks. And so I can't imagine that, it's going to be you play Robert. Now you open up with a small school game one, but like I can't imagine you play four of them in a row. Like you're going to be traveling. And if you have to play on the road, you play on the road because, hey, if you get wins on the road, that even helps you even more. So I don't know what they will decide to do, what Ross Hodge can do. Obviously, it's really late to schedule, and we kind of saw that in Mark Kellogg's first year. He couldn't really schedule anybody. In fact, the only Power 4 school I think he played in his non-conference schedule his very first year was Penn State. So it's hard to do that now. So it really matters regionally who has what filled out. Now, luckily, it's not like football where these contracts are signed 6 years, 10 years in advance. It's usually not even a year out. So you turn the page, obviously, to that. You'll look at around the region. Maybe Ross Hodge picks up a Penn State, or he picks up a school outside of Philly, or something along those lines that can get you those quality wins. And I think he knows what he's doing. He's done this, but honestly, he's probably not been on this end of it, because I think most of the Power 4 schools, ask the smaller schools. So he's not been on this receiving end. I'm sure it's probably he lets it come to him. So who knows about it? I want to go back to the question that you asked me. I think if you went group of 5 school or whatever they call it in basketball, Cleveland State. It's a former Mountaineer as the new head coach. His last name is Summers, I believe, but I just know he's 7-footer. Played at West Virginia. You could even add a game like that. Like any game that's going to add storyline that a TV network will pick up, easy money right there.
I do agree with that as well. I think you even mentioned right outside of Philadelphia, you can get an AAC opponent in Temple.
Yep.
I also like the prospect of maybe in East Carolina or Charlotte. So definitely a lot to work with regionally. You definitely mentioned it. It's a lot different than football, where we know some of these matchups early in the season, a couple of years in advance. We already know that WVU football is going to be playing, in Charlotte against Virginia, a couple of years in advance of it happening. So it is, kind of a blessing that you get to go season by season and get a feel for what the competition looks like. And you mentioned as well, pretty cool for Ross Hodge now to be on the other end, reaching out to schools to see if they would be interested in playing. So I think that, from what we've seen, in the media appearances that Ross Hodge has done, they are looking to perfect the non-conference schedule. And last year, the non-conference schedule was fully announced in late July. It seems like this year it might be a little earlier, but then again, time will tell when we officially get a release from the university. But overall, you have to be comfortable with the additions they have made to the schedule so far. I think, with all of that, that kind of rounds out what's new in WVU athletics over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, there's not much more really to talk about. I mean, football, obviously, the players are gone, so there's not much there. Women's basketball, there's not much new for us. I mean, the other guys that have graduated now have covered, and so there's not much more for us here. I mean, like you said, hopefully we will have more. Obviously, you're going to have the baseball team will continue to grow and keep going there, so you're going to have that over the last couple of weeks, but then that kind of stalls out. So, yeah, that's pretty much it here. Like I said, I mean, Selection Sunday, obviously your fingers are going to be crossed for West Virginia, but yeah, there's not much more, Bryce.
Thanks for having me on today, Quinn, in a successful first episode of the Mountaineer Sports Insider.
Right. Yeah, that's right. We are super excited to do this. Now, when school starts, we'll get Nick in here, Nick Castrulli, and then Nico Corretto will be joining us as well. But I think that's going to wrap up episode 1 of season 3, as we're going to call it, of the Mountaineer Sports Insider. I am U92 Sports Director Quinn Roby, alongside the Sports Managing Editor at the Daily Athenaeum, Bryce Cohen. We say, see you later on the podcast world.